Hello and welcome to Simple Country Place. I have 4 real-life, easy meal ideas for you. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe. Welcome and enjoy. The first thing I'm making is homemade tomato soup and grilled ham and cheese. So I have a diced up onion that I'm sauteing in some olive oil there. And I'm adding some garlic to also saute. After that cooks for just like a few minutes, I'm adding in some chicken broth, but I use bouillon cubes and water to make the broth. And then I had some roasted, so garden tomatoes during garden season, roasted them and then froze them. So that is what I'm adding for the, obviously, tomato soup. You need tomatoes, so the tomato aspect, those frozen garden tomatoes that I had roasted. For seasonings, I'm adding salt and pepper, parsley, oregano, and basil. And then I'm going to cover that and let it cook for like a significant period of time. I don't know how long I let it cook for, but you can certainly let it cook as long, or I feel like the longer the better, because then all the flavors come together. So I had, like I said, those garden tomatoes that were roasted and frozen in my freezer. This is kind of like a freezer clean out because I want to get rid of those. And I also had some ham frozen that was cooked ham in my freezer. So I was like, I'll make hot ham and cheeses to go with it. And so that's what I'm doing here. I wanted to make like kind of like Hot Pocket type situations. So I cut off the crust and then I'm like pressed down the bread or tried to flatten it. And then I'm adding provolone cheese. And then that ham I had in my freezer that was obviously thawed. And then cheddar cheese, because the cheesier the better. And then for like the edges, I melted some butter and then I like put the butter around the edge to moisten the bread, and then pressed it with a fork to make like a little like seal kind of. And for the most part it worked. However, it did when I like cooked them up like you would a grilled cheese, it did kind of, one part like leaked out a little bit, like kind of exploded. But I mean, it's the taste and the thought that counts, right? So it was my husband said it was good. It was a hot ham and cheese. What's not to love? So after that soup has been cooking for a while, I took my immersion blender and blended it all up to make it nice and no chunks left. And then I put it back on the stove and added sugar because I tasted it at this point and it was a little acidity. So I added some sugar and more basil and a splash of half and half to try and like make it creamy. And yeah, I mean, if you like tomato soup, it's super easy to home make, in my opinion. So every time, I mean, I'm not a huge tomato soup lover, but every once in a while you want some tomato soup and it's easy to make. And I just served that with some fresh veggies. And yeah, husband liked it. So this night I'm making one of his favorites. He really likes barbecue chicken for some reason. So I have a chicken breast that I cut up there and I am just cooking it. And for seasonings, I added salt and pepper and garlic powder. Once that's cooked, I am making the sauce. So some variation of how I always make this: grape jelly, barbecue sauce, and then for seasonings I add ground mustard, crushed red pepper, and cayenne powder. And mix that all together and let the chicken continue to cook in the sauce and the sauce to thicken. And yeah, my husband like specifically asked for this. And one time I made this with like just a chicken breast, I didn't cut it up. And he's like, it's not the same, you need to cut it up. So I don't know, maybe it's the child in him that likes the little pieces, but it's one of his favorites. So I aim to please. With barbecue stuff, I always feel like I should make like a cheesy side. So I'm making cheesy garlic mashed potatoes. I made them at 4. Butter, boiled potatoes, mashed that together. I added some half and half garlic powder, salt and pepper, and dried chives, and then cheddar cheese. And then obviously mix that all together. Sometimes I put it back on the stove to like help the cheese melt and help combine everything. Other times the potatoes are hot enough to do all that, so just kind of depends. But with the chicken and those potatoes, I serve that with green beans, and it's always a hit. He super likes it. So, and my nephew likes it too. And the cayenne powder was not too spicy for him. On this day, I made pork pasta, which I know sounds weird, but I was like, I have a bunch of pork and I wanted to make pasta. And so I found a recipe that I loosely used as inspiration. So I have some melted butter, and then I'm sauteing some minced garlic in there. And like I said, I had pork loin that I had cubed up, and I'm putting that in there and like searing it, not cooking it all the way, but searing it on all sides. And for seasonings, I just put salt and pepper at this point. I also, on a different burner, had some pasta cooking during this. So once that pork was like seared, it's not cooked all the way, but I'm adding some pasta water. That's what I'm doing here, adding some of that pasta water in there. And then for seasonings, I'm adding like a lot of basil and parsley, as well as Italian style shredded cheese. I mean, that's just happened to be what I had. I was looking for mozzarella, didn't have any, so I added that Italian style. And this actually turned out like quite impressive. I was kind of iffy about the sauce situation, but so once I added that cheese, I stirred that around a little bit, let the cheese melt, and the pork loin to finish cooking in what is now going to be that sauce. And like I said, trust the process here, because I was like, well, is this going to turn out? But look at that, turned out. And then I added the pasta in that and mixed that all around, and I just served that with a side salad. I literally, in my years of life, have never made pasta with pork. So that's fun, but My husband said it was super good. The nephew liked it. So it was a win. This day I'm making like ring bologna, ravioli, again, stuff I had in my freezer that I wanted to use up. Ring bologna or kielbasa, I don't know what people call it, but so starters, I'm dicing an onion and then cutting the ring bologna in like thin slices. I have some olive oil in that pan, and then I'm sauteing that onion. And then eventually I will be adding the meat, ring bologna, kielbasa, whatever you want to call it. I know there's a difference. I just don't know what it is. Adding that to heat up and get some color on it. After that has cooked for a while, I'm adding minced garlic, and then I let that cook for a little bit, and then I'm adding water, and I'm seasoning that whole situation with paprika, ground mustard, salt, and pepper. And I had some of that frozen cheese ravioli and just a little bit left in that bag in my freezer. So I added that in and covered that. And then I was like, well, I should probably push them down. So I uncovered it, pushed them down, covered it back up. And then I also decided that I wanted to add some broccoli to that. So cut up some broccoli, some fresh broccoli, threw that in so it could cook in the water and like soften. And then once the ravioli and the broccoli was cooked, I added some half and half and some shredded cheddar cheese, mixed that all together, and the cheese melted and stuff. And I was very much surprised at this too, because I was like, well, I thought it was gonna be like a soupy consistency, but it wasn't. It was like a thicker sauce, and I was pretty impressed with myself. And I tasted the sauce and it tasted good. And my husband, I mean, he really likes like kielbasa, so he really liked it. And cheese ravioli, what is not to love? So, and my nephew was not home this day, so that's why I only made less than I usually would. But thank you so much for watching, and please come back for future videos.